Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, as you know, President Trump now is on his way to meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping for a very high-stakes summit in China. But just before he left for his obviously very important summit with the Chinese president, President Trump gave an interview to Fox News, in particular to Fox News' John Roberts. And according to John Roberts, as well as Bill Malugin and several other reporters at Fox, they say that President Trump told them that he is now, his words, quote unquote, seriously considering making Venezuela the 51st state in the Union. Trump says there are many reasons why he wants to see Venezuela become the 51st state. He said the biggest one, they've got, according to Trump, $40 trillion worth of oil in the ground. So potentially they have almost unlimited reserves of oil that he says would greatly benefit the United States if they were made into a full-fledged state. Furthermore, he says Venezuelans love Trump. So I think there's a little bit of trolling there. But he's saying, look, I'm very popular. Many Venezuelans like me, especially for my decision to have snatched Maduro from power and brought him to face justice here in the United States. So he believes that Venezuelans would make excellent U.S. citizens, that this would add a lot to the natural wealth, especially the oil wealth and energy independence of the United States. And so he is now saying, because of his popularity in Venezuela, because of the popularity of the mission to snatch Maduro, effectively kidnapping him, and the fact that they possess so much in oil and natural gas wealth with their almost unlimited reserves, that they would make, in his view, a very, very valuable piece of territory that he says now should belong to the United States. Furthermore, Venezuela would cement America's energy independence, according to President Trump, and we would no longer have to rely at all on any oil from the Middle East or the Strait of Hormuz, that in fact we could turn the entire Western Hemisphere into an economic zone of self-sufficiency for the United States and for every country in the region. So what Trump is trying to do is he is trying to carve out essentially now an American sphere of dominance in the Western Hemisphere, and he would like to eventually acquire Venezuela as the 51st state. You know, his designs on Canada, he said repeatedly, he believes Canada should ultimately join the United States in a larger North American Union. And of course, he wants the territory of Greenland. He wants to make an offer to the Danes, Denmark, which is a colonial power. They still have some control and sovereignty over Greenland, that he wants to buy Greenland from Denmark and use it for an American version of the Iron Dome, essentially a North American defense shield system to protect us from hypersonic missiles, especially from Russia. So he wants to bring in eventually Greenland, Canada, but he says the one that he thinks deserves top priority is Venezuela. That the operation to overthrow Maduro, he believes, now potentially could pave the way for the absorption of Venezuela, not a territory as in Puerto Rico, but as an actual full-fledged 51st state. Now, a couple of points, and then I want to go to you, the great audience of Kuhner Country. 617-266-6868 is the number. I'll be honest with you. I've said it on X. I'm going to say it again now. I don't like the idea. I'm a hard no on this. Number one, I did not vote for this. I just didn't. I did not vote for us to start getting back into the empire business and acquiring territories left, right, and center. I didn't vote for this. Number two, and I think more importantly, we have so many problems here at home. Hell, we're in the middle of a war with Iran, where there is still no conclusion in sight. We have inflation now. The inflation report yesterday, 3.8% in April, almost 4%. Inflation is rearing its ugly head again, primarily because of the war in Iran and soaring oil and gas prices. But still, inflation is now back and it's at 4% or close to 4%. So inflation now is back. Oil prices are high. I paid $4.50 at the pump for a gallon of regular unleaded. Soon it's going to be $5 a gallon. Energy costs are high. Many Americans say for them, their number one issue is not Venezuela. It's not Greenland. It's not the war with Iran. On the war with Iran, the president remains unpopular. The number one issue for most Americans, especially heading into these all-important historic midterm elections, it's the economy. It's the cost of living. It's inflation. It's the cost of health care. It's affordability. Many Americans say they can barely pay their bills. They're living check to check. Things are too expensive. Food, groceries, gas, utilities, energy. When Trump talks like this, he is, to most Americans, he comes across as now tilting at windmills, almost as if this is a fantasy. And do we really want Venezuela? Just on the merits of the issue, do we really want the population of Venezuela? You get 28, 29 million, 32 million. I've seen different figures. So let's just say 30 million for the sake of argument. Do we really want to absorb 30 million Spanish-speaking Venezuelans, a third world country? One, I understand it's got potential wealth in oil and natural gas, no question. But we're talking about one of the poorest countries in Latin America, a third world nation, 30 million. And now we want to absorb it into the United States? That means, they're citizens. They get to vote. By the way, not only do they get to vote, they get to go anywhere in the United States they want. I thought Trump, and I thought it was a magnificent argument, was when he said Maduro emptied out his prisons and mental asylums, and you got Tren de Aragua, and he basically told his criminals and the mentally ill, go and El Norte. And our job was to secure the border and deport these criminal, illegal Venezuelans. Well, now we're going to essentially inherit Tren de Aragua and all of these, gangbangers and people who are mentally ill and dangerous. Now they can come across our border because they're American citizens. We can't deport them. They get to come and move anywhere they want. And furthermore, and I don't know if he's thought this through. Yeah, maybe there is tens of trillions of dollars of oil wealth in the ground, potentially somewhere down the road. But let me tell you what's going to happen immediately. You're going to see 30 million Venezuelans get on welfare, be eligible for Social Security, be eligible for Medicare or Medicaid, or all kinds of other benefits. This is going to overrun and overwhelm our system. It's going to be immensely expensive. I don't even know if we can financially handle it. And then you look at the demographic changes. This is going to lead now to a massive demographic change in the United States, where 30 million Spanish speakers are now going to be made overnight into full-fledged citizens. It's almost a form, to me, of amnesty. Not that they came into our country illegally, but here's a country sitting there in South America, And what have they done? Nothing. And now we're just going to go, okay, admit them. Okay, overnight they become a U.S. citizen. And so they can come into the continental United States at will and resettle anywhere they want. Many Venezuelans are still loyal to the Maduro regime. Many Venezuelans voted for Chavez. You have FARC, which is operating in Venezuela, communist guerrillas. We absorb Venezuela. Not only are we absorbing a third world nation, but we're also potentially going to be absorbing a Marxist insurgency. Let me ask you straight out. President Trump now has told Fox he is, quote unquote, seriously considering making Venezuela the 51st state in the Union. He says they have tremendous amounts, almost unlimited oil wealth. He says he believes up to $40 trillion. We shall, I don't know about that, but anyway, it's a lot, no question. They have one of the biggest reserves of oil in the world. He says, especially after the operation that dislodged Maduro from power, captured him, and now, of course, he's going to face justice in a court in New York, that the Venezuelan people love Trump. They're overall, he says, many of them are pro-American, and that they would make excellent U.S. citizens. And he doesn't want them to just become a territory, but he says they should be the 51st state. And he's now saying that he's going to do as much as he can to convince the Republicans to support it. Now, for this to happen, as Trump laid out in his interview with Fox News, he says two things. Number one, the Venezuelans themselves are going to have to hold a national referendum. So the Venezuelans are going to have to approve it in a referendum or a plebiscite in Venezuela. He said once they approve that, then he says it will be up to Congress to approve it. And this is where Trump says he will lean on both the House, the Republicans in the House, and in the Senate to persuade them to acquire Venezuela, to absorb it, and make it the 51st state, which means they would have congressional representation in the House, and they would, of course, get 2 senators. And he believes in the end, this will be a crown jewel of his legacy that he will have added to the overall power, strength, and wealth of the United States. In many ways, the way Theodore Roosevelt did, the way McKinley did, the way James Polk did, and prior presidents before him. So he believes that this is going to enhance our influence and our strength in the Western Hemisphere and make us even more energy independent. He says our oil wealth, which is number 1 in the world, combined now with Venezuela's oil wealth, would make us an energy superpower unrivaled. And that essentially we wouldn't have to rely on any more oil from the rest of the world. So Trump believes it's a long shot. He's not saying it's going to be easy, but Trump believes that he wants to do it. He believes it can be done. And he says he's willing to expend diplomatic or political capital to get it done. Now, having said all that, do you support Venezuela becoming the 51st state? Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea? You know where I stand on the issue. I'm a hard no for many, many reasons. Venezuela is a very poor country. I understand the natural wealth, but we absorb Venezuela. It is going to cost us hundreds of billions of dollars to reconstruct Venezuela, and you're going to see 30 million of them are going to become eligible for all kinds of federal benefits, welfare benefits, as I said, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They will be able to come into the United States as any other citizen could, like from Alaska or Hawaii, unimpeded. And many Venezuelans, if they vote yes, and I believe they would vote yes, frankly, they would be crazy not to vote yes. I mean, if I was living in a slum in Caracas and they tell me, do you want to be a citizen of the United States? I'm not, I'm not walking. I'm running to the polls to vote yes because I've just won the lottery. I can go live in the United States legally, no problem. I'm not sneaking in through the border. And I can come in and collect all the welfare I want, or I can stay in Venezuela and collect all the welfare I want. So to me, by the way, and I think the American people would be against it. I don't think the American people would support this. And so I think it would be I think it would hurt Trump politically, never mind not being in the national interest of the United States. And let me just say one other point, and then I want to go to the phone lines. 617-266-6868 is the number. Many of you are texting the Kuhner man, emailing the Kuhner man, saying, Jeff, probably Trump is trolling. Now, this story is starting to get legs. Wall Street Journal had a big editorial on it. You have the media now is covering it. It's becoming big news. It is huge news in Venezuela, huge news across Latin America. So maybe he is trolling, maybe he isn't. But according to those that interviewed him, they said he seemed very serious to us. And Trump has not shot down or in any way contradicted all of these media reports that he's seriously considering wanting to make Venezuela the 51st state. So maybe it's a trial balloon. Maybe he wants to see what the reaction will be. And if he gets a good reaction or a passionate reaction, he'll go forward with it. If he gets a lukewarm or a cold reception, maybe he'll just, okay, forget it. It was one of these things I thought was a good idea, but if the American people aren't for it, fine. We'll just keep them under our protectorate and, keep taking the oil. But it seems clear to me that Trump, whether it be Iran, whether it be Greenland, whether it be the 8 or 9 peace deals that he signed, now he's talking about overthrowing the regime in Cuba, even though we haven't even finished the war with Iran. Now that he's talking about making Venezuela the 51st state, even though, again, we haven't finished the war in Iran, Trump seems to have aspirations. Okay, this is from Dave, our Western PA constitutionalist correspondent. He's based in the Pittsburgh area. He just sent me a message. Jeff, bad idea on Venezuela. Dave doesn't like it. So far from the text line, the emails I've been getting, a lot of you feel the same way. Some of you are saying, well, maybe as a territory, maybe I could see it. But even then, there would have to be a lot of debate and deliberation. We'd have to have a real debate as a country, make it something like Puerto Rico or Guam or, or the Virgin Islands. But to make it a full-fledged state, so far, many of you are saying bad idea. In fact, many of you are saying you'd wish you would focus and stick to domestic issues, whether it's getting gas down, energy down, inflation down, cost of living down, that we have so many problems here at home that we don't have time to indulge in some of these more grandiose ideas that President Trump seems to have. So let me ask all of you. We're going to talk about the elections. There's a lot happening in terms of what's developing for the midterms. It looks very good for Republicans at this point. One of the reasons why it does look so good for Republicans is because the Democrats have become so radical and so extreme. And this is pushing many people to say, even though I'm not happy with the Republican leadership in Congress and what they've done with their time in power, we can't have the Democrats come back in. So the Democrats' extremism, their fanaticism, the fact that they have gone so far to the left is Trump's secret weapon and the Republicans' secret weapon. It appears, at least according to the polls, and now you have redistricting as well, which is going to give the Republicans a ton of momentum and a real advantage heading into November. However, the one criticism now that is emerging against Trump even from many of his own diehard MAGA supporters, is that they find that he is too preoccupied with foreign policy, with foreign affairs, with issues abroad, and that they wish he would focus and concentrate more on domestic issues and domestic problems, the economy, inflation being number 1 and 2. And my fear is that when he keeps giving interviews like this, and it goes everywhere, it goes viral, I mean, it's absolutely everywhere, that he wants to make Venezuela the 51st state. He feeds into this narrative that the Democrats are pushing, that he's really not interested in running the United States, or to be more accurate, that he's not that interested in solving the internal domestic problems of the United States, that he seems disengaged and disconnected. And so, because I'll tell you this right now, making Venezuela the 51st state, I don't think is on anybody's top priority list. I don't even think it's on most people's, top 10 or top 20 list. So, again, I'm like, I don't know I don't think you're helping yourself. I think it's bad policy. I think it'd be bad for the United States. But even from a political PR point of view, I don't think you're helping. I mean, you may disagree with me. I don't think you're helping yourself with this. 617-266-6868. Okay, I'm going to go to Timothy in Malden. But before I do want to play one cut, because this is the cut now that is being used against Trump over and over. The Democrats are, when I say pouncing, they are pouncing over this. And again, they're trying to reinforce or bolster this narrative that he doesn't care about the financial economic circumstances, the daily struggles that ordinary Americans have right now. Listen now to Trump. He's on Marine One at the White House lawn, and a reporter asks, well, you're negotiating with Iran, and what about, financial considerations, that gas prices are high, that oil is over $100 a barrel, that you have inflation now rearing its ugly head, that higher energy prices, that is this a consideration of yours when dealing with Iran, i.e. end the war quicker so gas and oil can come down as quickly as possible? Listen to Trump's response. Roll cut 1, Mike.
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. That's the only thing that matters.
Now, I understand what he's trying to say, obviously. Hey, I'm thinking about the national security of the United States, and I have to see this war through to the end. They cannot be allowed to have a nuke, because if they have a nuke, it'll lead to a nuclear war. It will threaten Israel. Israel has nukes. They will respond. It could attack Europe. It could eventually come here to the United States. Nothing is more important than preserving the security of America and the world. I get it. But the way he said it, and, the way he phrased it, and in particular, when he said, I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. And he goes on about Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. The Democrats are all over this. I mean, they're going Thunderdome, saying, you see, he doesn't care about you. You're struggling. He doesn't care. You can't put food on the table. Everything's too expensive. Gas, oil, energy, utilities, cost of living. He doesn't care. So, because it was awkwardly phrased, to me, it was an unforced error. I think he should have been more careful in the way he said it. But because I know he obviously does care about ordinary people and their struggles. But now he's given the left and the Democrats ammunition to paint him as someone who's cold, who's indifferent, who's disconnected, and again, who's just obsessed with foreign affairs and is neglecting the problems, the real hard problems of Americans at home. Agree, disagree? I want to ask you two questions. Number one, Trump says he's considering, quote, seriously considering making Venezuela the 51st state. Should Venezuela be admitted into the Union? I say no. What say you? And number two, Trump now in an interview said, well, I'm not really thinking about the financial situation of Americans. To me, the only thing I care about is the bomb. Is the perception now starting to build in the country that the president is more focused on foreign policy than he is on domestic problems at home? And will that hurt him going into the midterms and going into November and with the voters? 617-266-6868. How do you feel? Do you feel Trump is focusing on bread and butter issues and issues that matter to you? Or do you feel he's now become too preoccupied with foreign affairs? Timothy in Malden, you're going to kick us off, Timothy. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good morning.
Hi.
Hi. Listen, he can't bring Venezuela into as a 51st state. There's just too much here at home he needs to start worrying about, and he's already worried about Iran too much and focused on over there. He's not even focusing on here anymore. He hasn't even talked about the redistricting as much as he should, and that's going to help him in the midterms.
So, Timothy, I take it you're a no on Venezuela. Timothy, Mike, what happened? All right. Timothy, hang on. Okay. Should Venezuela be the 51st state in the Union? President Trump now says he's seriously considering it. He wants to order Delcy Rodriguez. She is now the current president or the acting president of Venezuela. She was Maduro's number 2. He wants to order her, he says, to hold a referendum. And then after a referendum is held, and I'm telling you it's going to be like 70, 80% are going to vote to become part of the United States. They would be crazy not to. Then he says Congress will have to approve it. And he says he will put maximum pressure on both Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson to make it happen. He wants Venezuela as the 51st state. He says it will be the crown jewel of his second term. We are looking at $40 trillion in oil in the ground. He says you combine Venezuela's oil wealth with our massive oil wealth, and he says you will have an energy superpower. Do you support Venezuela becoming the 51st state? Timothy in Malden, let's go right back. He says no. He says we got a lot of problems to deal with here at home, starting with the cost of living, cost of gas, inflation, food, groceries. And Timothy was saying just before the break, he wants Trump to focus more on problems at home and forget about Venezuela. Timothy, please pick up where you left off.
Here as it is. We have enough problems here at home as it is. Why do we need to get Venezuela to become our 51st state? We don't need it. We have enough on our own. And we have enough problems here at home as our own, never mind adding another third world country as part of our own country. Don't we have enough to fix here first? Then worry about another country and trying to fix them?
Well, Timothy, look, in a way, just to add to your point, you legalize, because this is what would happen. You know, if they become a state, even a territory, but definitely a state, if they're a state, so you basically now, you've given amnesty. I'm not saying that's his intent, but that's the de facto result. You make them a state in the Union. you've given 30 million Venezuelans automatic citizenship. They're automatic U.S. citizens. In other words, it's amnesty. So it's almost like giving 30 million illegals in this country amnesty. It's the almost the same equivalent. So you put 30 million and you put them on Social Security, or you give them federal benefits, which they're all going to be eligible, and welfare and public housing and EBT, and I could go on and on. It's going to bankrupt us. Yeah, I get it. Down the road, it's a gold mine in terms of oil, but I'm not talking about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I'm talking about now. We can't absorb 30 million people. We just can't. And one of the poorest third world countries in Latin America. And not only do you get them on welfare, or many of them, but you get their criminals. You get their gangs. You have an insurgency, literally a Marxist guerrilla group that is waging terrorism in parts of Venezuela. We're going to have to deal with all of that. In other words, we're going to be importing, not just their wealth, but all of their freaking problems. And, and I think the Democrats are going to kill him, saying, so you kept going on about Venezuela dumping their criminals and their, Tren de Aragua and their drug traffickers. And now we're just going to give them all American citizenship? I mean, I could see the Democrats just ripping him to shreds on this. So I understand the big picture he's trying to look at. But, Timothy, I'm with you. We got to focus on problems here at home. To me, that's the only way he can now lose the midterms. You look at redistricting, and I'm going to get to this later in the show. It's victory after victory after victory. The Republicans really have now the wind at their back. And then you look at these polls. The polls are practically dead even. And when you ask voters, well, why? Why aren't you going to go for the Democrats? They go, they're too crazy. They're just too crazy. I don't want crazy to be in power again. So Trump has a real chance to win in November. But when you start, talking about Venezuela as the 51st state as an example, you're just reinforcing the narrative. Well, he's not really interested in problems at home. And that's the number one criticism emerging against him by voters. Timothy, final word to you. Agree, disagree?
I agree with you at 100%, even 1,000%, as you say.
Timothy, thank you so much for that call. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
John, in the great state of Arizona, one of the most beautiful states in the union, but let that go. John, thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Bulldozer. How are you?
Very good, John. I know it's early there, so I'm happy that you're calling. What do you make of this, John?
Well, I think it isn't going to go far as far as Venezuela. What I do think is there's three key things to being dominant in the world. One of them is water, potable water, and plenty of it. Two is a independent food supply. And three is energy dominance. Once you've achieved those, then you become more or less the kingpin of world dominance. And I don't mean dominance in a bad way. I mean that you're able to somewhat keep other countries that are problems, China, Russia, more in check. I do not believe it's going to go as far as statehood. I don't even think it would go to a territory. What I do think it would be a protectorate. And if they voted for going into U.S., that doesn't mean it has to go to Congress or anything else. It's just hold them back as a protectorate, increase our dominance in oil and gas production. We already have strength in the food production and exporting, especially to Russia and China. And the third thing is you have plentiful water, which all three give you survivability. and it's harder for other countries to put pressure on you.
Oh, I agree.
So,
no, John, I completely agree, and very perceptive on your part. Look, we're blessed. You know, there used to be a saying in the 19th century. The Europeans would say this: God must be an American. They look at the United States, our geographic location, Pacific Ocean on one side, Atlantic Ocean on the other. Whatever you think of Mexico and Canada, relatively peaceful neighbors. I know Mexico now with the cartels, but generally, you know, Canada, we have the longest unguarded border in history. So you're not next to Russia. You're not next to Germany. You know, you're not next to certain countries where it's like, every 20 years there's a possible invasion. So relatively peaceful neighbors. And what you just talked about, an abundance of natural resources. We have water. We have food. All the food practically we would ever need is here. All the water we would need is here. And now, thanks to fracking and drilling, as I gave the numbers a couple times already, we are by far the most dominant energy producer, oil and natural gas in the world, more than twice that of Saudi Arabia. And the Saudis are second. So, you know, I get it. You know, he wants to give us even more energy dominance. But frankly, we don't need Venezuelan oil. I mean, it's nice if we had it, don't get me wrong. But we've got so much oil and natural gas here. And I thought, okay, you knock off Maduro, I get it. Then keep Venezuela as a kind of a protectorate. And you can continue to access their oil. But once you start talking about making it a territory, never mind a state, well, now you're taking on all the liabilities. You're not just getting the benefits. Now you're taking on, you know, all the liabilities, all the problems. It's a mess. Why would we want to take that on? And so, you know, you want to be economically self-sufficient. You want to be economically independent because you're completely right, John. If we have all the oil that we can use and all the water and all the food, and if we get our supply chains back here, especially on things like, medicine, pharmaceuticals, you know, things that are important, our manufacturing, we're gold. We're not at the mercy of China or Russia or other powers. So that gives us an immense advantage. So I'm with you all the way. That's why, to me, what Trump needs to do is he's got to solve the problems that are plaguing us here. And I know he's trying to, but I think he's got to redouble and re-triple his effort. He's got to focus like a laser beam. We've got 30, 40 million illegals still in our country. The deportations have to intensify. We've got crime here. Look what happened in, I know it's far away from you, John. You're in Arizona, but Memorial Drive in Cambridge. Sandy drives through there every day. I can't tell you how many times I've driven on Memorial Drive. A madman with a rifle came out. By the way, released early from parole, a career criminal who shot 13 rounds at police officers in 2020, and they let him out early on parole. Even though the police were warning, saying, you better not let this guy early. He's going to get somebody killed. He's dangerous. So you have these soft on crime policies that the Democrats are peddling that are literally getting people killed and shot. 2 innocent drivers were shot by this guy, one in the head, just simply driving on Memorial Drive. And this guy with his rifle just firing 50, 60 rounds. Boom, 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 indiscriminately. And this person now, very critical condition, may die. Even if the person survives, a shot in the head, that's, you're talking potential brain damage, paralysis. So this is what's happening in the country. Never mind inflation. Never mind, oil prices, gas prices, energy prices. Again, I mentioned it, the report yesterday. We're at 3.8% inflation. If anything, the pressure is going to grow on the Fed to raise interest rates. So we got a 37, $38 trillion national debt. The debt alone is going to choke us and suffocate us. So I'm like, no, we've done enough for the world. Seriously, we've done enough. It's time to focus here at home because we have everything we need to be the strongest, wealthiest country, the freest country in the world. John, thank you so much for that call. Agree, disagree. Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Call, Jeff. Thanks for taking the call, Jeff.
My pleasure.
I have to say that Trump is a visionary. And what I mean by that is he plays three-dimensional chess. He looks into the future. He sees $41 trillion worth of oil. He sees a Venezuela that was one of the most wealthiest countries that had been under poor rule for a couple of dictators. He sees the future, and the future is energy. The fellow that spoke before me as far as food and water, that's all right. Along with energy, it makes us the superpower of the world. And let's face it, if we're the superpower of the world, wars cannot go on because they need to be fueled. They have to have energy. China will be in check. Russia will be in check. A lot of these other threats will be in check because we're going to be the broker of all the energy and the fuel. Trump, we're not responsible for the 15 to 20 million people that Biden let in for free. They're all on our backs. We're talking about 30 trillion Venezuelans. They're paying for themselves. Their natural resources, their strategic military presence of where they are in the world, that'll be our presence there. This is all going to have a major effect on other countries that purchase fuel, as in Cuba. Cuba could roll right along and in the future be part of the U.S. I think that Trump is thinking long term. I think as soon as the issues with Iran get over with, you're going to see prices and fuel drop. That's going to affect all of the food and chain. Of course, everything moves by fuel. Everything's going to go down once that issue is resolved. And I think that in the future, everything, by the time he's finished with his presidency, that we'll have lower fuel. We'll have Venezuela in our pocket. We'll have Iran at bay. We'll have the world in our hands.
Dan, so I take it you're in favor of Venezuela becoming the 51st state?
Bigger is better.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Bigger is better.
Bigger is better. Okay, I got you. Dan, let me ask you this, because to prevent political terrorism, to prevent a violent insurgency, because the Venezuelans are a proud people, and they speak Spanish, and they're very proud of and they should be. They should be very proud of their Spanish heritage. So they don't want to speak English, right? Sort of like Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a territory, but basically Spanish is the language. I mean, some of them speak English, but when you go to Puerto Rico, it's basically a Spanish-speaking island. You mentioned Cuba as well. The Cubans are also very, very proud. And the language in Cuba is Spanish, just like the language in Venezuela is Spanish. So I would assume if we were to make it a 51st state, we would have to say Spanish is still the official language in Venezuela. Now, the reason why I'm asking you this is you start having now, we have a lot of Hispanics already in our country, many of whom are not, mostly illegals, but they're not learning English. You already have parts of the United States that it's Spanish only or heavily bilingual. Los Angeles, Southern California, Arizona, just other parts here, even in Massachusetts. You add 30 million Spanish speakers. What's eventually going to happen is we're going to become a bilingual country, a bilingual, bicultural country. Is that feasible? In other words, aren't we now diluting our own national cultural identity if we continue to expand? You said, well, let's eventually even absorb Cuba. And then, once you start absorbing, it won't, who knows? It could be El Salvador, It could be other countries, So eventually we're going to have so many Spanish speakers as their first language that will become, as I said, a bilingual, bicultural country. That's no longer the United States of America. We're creating something very different. And generally, bilingual, bicultural countries fall apart. They're unstable because they don't have a common culture. They don't have a common language. They don't have a common heritage. They don't have a common history that binds people together, brings people together. So are we now risking of creating, what the Bible warned against, a Tower of Babel, where you have people with different tongues, different languages, and in the end, it's not going to be a coherent country anymore. That, yes, will grab valuable territory, but in the end, we're going to lose our identity as a people and as a nation. What say you?
I'd say you made some very nice points, but you got to realize that we're practically bilingual already. Our Spanish is like a second language. You go into areas of Massachusetts, that's practically all of what they speak. We just had 15 or 20 million people come into the country speaking all types of languages. If you go into Market Basket, you hear every language being spoken. We have dropped the ball for assimilation. That's where the problem lies. We should go back to the 1960s and the era where we actually allow people in here that are a benefit to us. And in this regard, Venezuela is a benefit to us for the natural resources. We've already got a large population of Spanish. We would have to try harder on our assimilation. But our problems really lie more deeply in our terrible liberal Democratic Party that basically is the biggest threat that we have within our country because it splits and divides us. Once that gets dealt with, once that we've what I call handled that situation where they're not our adversaries, they should be our allies, but they're not. Once we get over that and get focused on some real issues instead of fighting amongst ourselves, I think that those things can all be handled. But, of course, we need to handle the liberals, their thinking, their approach to government. We have to win that. And once that we get on one page and everyone is thinking alike, we can move forward. We can acquire these countries. There can be a benefit to us. Yes, it's change. But life is about change, Jeff.
Interesting.
You can't stop it.
Interesting. Okay, Dan, thank you very much for that call. Okay, so you heard Dan. He supports the president. He says, no, bigger is better. Make Venezuela the 51st state. Trump is, in fact, being a geopolitical visionary. He sees the future. The future is going to be energy. It's going to be oil. It's going to be us carving out our destiny here in the Western Hemisphere. And Dan says, don't stop with Venezuela. Cuba is about to fall. Maybe it's time we absorb Cuba. In other words, start adding countries from Latin America and make them either territories or states. Do you agree? 617-266-6868 is the number. And let me ask all of you, do you think Congress would approve it? That's the second part. Will the American people in general support it? Do you support it? I think if there's a referendum in Venezuela, they're going to pass it. They'd be nuts not to pass a referendum to become a state. The question is it practical and realistic here? And with the midterms looming and all the other challenges Trump faces, is this a pipe dream? Or do you think Trump should spend political capital to try to make it happen? Okay, it's Wednesday. Well, we're almost at 7:20-ish. You know what that means. Truth or troll? Take it away, Mike.
And now, America's favorite game show, where you get to decide on the Kuhner Report. This is Truth or Troll.
Today's entry for Truth or Troll comes from Tennessee State Representative Antonio Parkinson, who spoke on the House floor in Memphis the other day, and he went on a bombastic rant against redistricting and threatened secession.
If this body believes that Memphis should not have the right to elect representation reflective of its own community, the legislature should explain why Memphis should continue to be part of the state of Tennessee. Let Memphis secede. You don't have to redraw maps when you let us out. Let my people go.
Let his people go. So there it is. Is he telling the truth? Does he really want this, or is he just trolling?
He's trolling. This loser. Boy, it's incredible, huh? When the Democrats gerrymander, Mike, no problem. It's all okay. All's fair in love and war. But now, when the whip is on the other hand, and they're losing some of these redistricting battles, like in Tennessee, and now all of a sudden, secede! Let my people go.
I mean, would anybody really even notice if Memphis left?
Tennessee?
Yeah.
To be honest, if I live in Tennessee, I'm like, go.
Like, what are we really losing there?
We're gaining.
Are we really just losing the Bass Pro Shop pyramid? The Grizzlies? What are we really missing out on?
If I was a Tennessean, I'd be like, guys, you want to leave. There's the door, man. But notice these Dems, when things don't go their way, boy, they love to secede. Have you noticed that? I mean, it's just, secede. Oh, boy. So we're back to 1860 now, huh? All right. Let me ask all of you. When this Democrat is now threatening that Memphis should secede to protest now the new redistricting map drawn up by the governor and the state legislature for Tennessee, which, by the way, is going to take away a majority-minority district, the one in Memphis, and is going to give Republicans an extra potential seat in Congress. Is he A, when he says we want to secede, is he A, telling the truth? Like he's serious? Like Memphis will secede? Or B, do you think he's trolling? I think this clown is trolling, but that's me. I want to hear from you. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in national ER. You can also vote via X, my handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, KUHNER. Matt in Bridgewater. Thanks for holding, Matt, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Good. How are you, Matt?
Good, sir. Calling back again. So, in the words of Jay-Z, Trump has 99 problems, and Venezuela should not be one of them. I agree with the other callers. I agree that it would be a great energy staple. But, again, like you said, we have way too many issues here. The Memorial Drive. I mean, at what point do we call ourselves we're becoming a third world country? I mean, people just going in the middle of the street shooting in Cambridge. I mean, we have something new every day here. And I think Trump really needs to reel it back in and bring it back to the homeland. But I agree with you also that I feel like he's just trying to make a legacy for himself. It's his last term, and I truly believe he is trying to go down in history, but it is hurting the American people at the same time.
Matt, I want to ask you, because I'm getting a lot of Trump supporters telling me this, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, but almost if there's one thing I hear about Trump from his voters, it's this, that the second Trump, meaning in this second term, is not the same Trump as in his first term. That they just find his priorities different. They look at some of his actions and say, this is different. This is not, A, what many of us voted for, but B, that it just seems that, Trump was so focused on the economy in his first term and on inflation and on drilling and on oil and on crime and obviously on illegal immigration and building the wall and the border. It was almost all domestic, and he didn't start any wars. He was proud of that. And now you look at his second term, and it's a very different Trump. Do you feel that way, or do you feel, I don't know, do you agree or disagree? I'm just curious.
I agree with you 1,000%, Jeff. It definitely does not feel like the same Trump as in term one. And what I mean by that is the same points that you said, is going into war, using our service members in that war. We can all applaud that Venezuela went smooth. But again, it's hard to sit here and think that this is what Trump wants. And it's hard not to think that there are other outside sources, and I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but if you follow the money, it just makes you feel like Trump is running on orders for other countries. And I just feel like the United States is getting the back row, and it's not looking good. Take over Venezuela for what? We have enough of Spanish immigrants here that we're taking care of now, and as we have been seeing in the almost year of Trump being in office, we're still struggling worse than before. And it's just, every time I hear about Trump lately, and to be honest with you, Kuhner, the first time I ever voted was the last term, and I voted for Trump. And it's a heartache for me, but I do hold faith that he is going to turn around and hopefully just stay on the U.S. soil and really hit the ground running and really try to make our country the superpower that it once was.
Amen. Matt, I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm hoping we get this Iran war behind us and really start focusing on these America First core issues that we need to focus on if we're going to save our country. And that's why I so desperately want the midterms to turn out well. We can't lose the midterms because I believe we'll lose our nation. I really do. Okay, Ronnie's up in Boston, but I got to go to Mike. We're going to break. All right, so hang on. I'm going to take more of your calls. 617-266-6868 is the number. Ronnie in Boston. Thanks for holding, Ronnie, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Kuhner Country.
Ronnie, how are you, my friend?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm recovering from hernia surgery and so happy to just be home recovering, listening to you. I just want to say real quickly, Jeff, that one of the reasons I respect you so much as a broadcasting mentor and as a broadcaster in general is how gracious you are to people who disagree or offer a different point of view. Like you sincerely enjoy engaging people who disagree, MAGA or not. And it really shines in episodes like this. So thank you, Jeff. When I look at this, I only look at the whys. Why did Trump give that answer that he did to the reporter? And the reason that he did is because Iranians have intelligence people that are hearing the same audio that you're playing. They know that Trump is floating, making Venezuela a state. And the reason Trump gave that answer is because if he had given any other answer, the IRGC would know that their stall tactics are working. So when they hear Trump say that he doesn't give a crap about the price of gas, he doesn't give a crap what his supporters think, what Democrats think, he's only focused on Iran not having the bomb, Iran knows that he means it. They know that he means it. And in fact, if they heard this show today, they'd know that he means it even more. Secondly, I believe that the only reason Trump is floating the idea of making Venezuela a 51st state is because if I were an IRGC senior official in Iran, my first thought would be he's got us blockaded, and the only source of leverage we have left, which is the black goop that we're sitting on, we can't sell it, so it's useless. And what Trump is doing is if Trump makes Venezuela the 51st state, he's going to make Venezuela the new Strait of Hormuz. he's going to make Venezuela the new Iran. And they know deep down that who would Europe and China and everybody rather buy oil from? A terror nation where, you're under threat the minute you pull into that strait? Or would you rather go over to friendly Venezuela and buy it in a cheaper, safer environment with good faith business? So Trump is giving Iran a binary choice. You can give up your nuclear ambitions, or you can give up your entire oil industry, which is the only thing that keeps your whole miserable country afloat. Because it's not what you and I think about what Trump is doing that's going to get this peace deal done in Iran. It's what Iran thinks that's going to get this done. It's what Iran thinks that's going to get them to capitulate. And I guarantee you, Jeff, that's what they're thinking right now. He's going to keep that blockade in place, and he's going to turn Venezuela into the new Strait of Hormuz for the entire world. And so we either give up the nuclear weapons or our oil is useless, because Trump is going to take the entire global market away from us, and we're just going to be sitting on nothing. Like straight out of There Will Be Blood at the end of the movie. You know what I mean? Where the guy was just sitting on worthless oil, literally, because the other guy came in and, like he said, used his straw to suck it all the way over from where I am to where you are. And that's what Trump is doing. That's why he gave that reporter the answer that he did. And that's why, he's floating this idea of Venezuela becoming the 51st state.
Interesting. Very interesting. Ronnie, let me ask you then point blank. I guess I can just surmise from your answer, but I want to ask you, so do you support Trump's proposition that we should make Venezuela the 51st state?
Said, Jeff, what I support is why he's floating this idea. Like, to me personally, I think whether it becomes the 51st state or not is kind of irrelevant. I think that this is just all about getting Iran to stop stalling and give up the nuke.
In other words, almost like as a form of leverage, right? In other words, let me go out there and say I'm going to make it the 51st state, and that's going to really get the Ayatollah's attention. Because they're going to look at this and say, well, guys, you don't want to give us your oil, we'll keep it blockaded, and we'll get all the oil we need from Venezuela. So in other words, you're saying what Trump is really doing is he's using our control of Venezuela as leverage against the mullahs, correct?
Not just leverage, Jeff, but 100% credible leverage. This isn't a smokescreen, Jeff. Whether he does it or not, this is a credible, workable plan that would completely bypass Iran altogether if they don't want to give up those nukes. It's completely a credible, feasible proposition, whether he means it or not.
Do you think he means it?
Yes, I do. I do think he means it. I think that, Trump, the one thing he said to that reporter that's 1,000% right, and all of these moves prove it, is that the only thing he is thinking about right now is a no-nuke Iran, and now the Iranian leadership knows it too. If Trump had said, yeah, I feel really bad about the gas prices, and I really hope we can get a deal done soon, and blah, blah, blah. If Trump had given that answer, Iran knows that their tactics are working, and it would have given Iran leverage. And he's not giving them any leverage. He's just boxing them further and further into a simple binary choice: your nukes or your industry.
Ronnie, as always, thank you so much for that call. I really appreciate it. So you heard Dan, now you heard Ronnie. You've heard both sides. What say you? Should Trump continued? In other words, is Trump right when he says Venezuela should become the 51st state? And do you support Venezuela becoming the 51st state? 617-266-6868. Mark in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Hey, buddy.
Mark, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, living the dream every day, bud, At least I'm not on Memorial Drive dodging bullets. Mayor Wu says it's the safest city in the nation,
the nation. Yeah, no, I honestly, Mark, it's like something, speaking of Venezuela, it's like something out of Caracas. You got this guy with this rifle literally in the middle of the road, and he's just shooting at people. And by the way, Mark, stabbed 2 people in 2014. I think that was in Chinatown. He's a career criminal. He's got a rap sheet as long as my arm. So he stabs 2 people in 2014. Then he goes to jail for that. They let him out early. He then shoots 13 rounds at officers, almost gets a couple police officers killed. He goes a couple years in jail for that. They let him out early. And everybody's saying he's going to get somebody killed. He's a ticking time bomb. He's crazy. And what did they do, Mark? The crazy moonbats, they let him out. And this time with a rifle. And by the way, a rifle that's illegal to be owned in Massachusetts. So how's that gun control working out for these moonbats? But let that go, Mark. And there he is. Boom, 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 boom. Right there in the middle of Memorial Drive. That's Mayor Wu's Boston for you. That's Healy's Massachusetts for you, Mark. You feel safe, my friend?
Where I live, Jeff. The only thing I got to worry about are bears and crazy people. Nobody wants to come on my property.
Mark,
all right.
What do you make of this? Trump now telling Fox News he's seriously considering making Venezuela the 51st state. What say you?
I really hope he's trolling, Jeff. Here's the thing. You've talked about how 30 million people would be eligible for welfare as soon as that happened. Here's the other side of this, though, Jeff. They got almost a 3,000-mile-long border with Colombia and Brazil, and, our border is smaller than that. But here's the thing, Jeff. When you become a U.S. state, you become a border state, Jeff. That means they got a 3,000-mile-long border, Jeff. No longer will people have to make that.
Mike, I got to say, man, it's just, you can't give an extra 15, 20 seconds? Okay, let's go right back to Mark in New Hampshire. He was making, I think, an absolutely very perceptive point, which is, say Venezuela does become the 51st state. Well, now it becomes a border state. And it's got a 3,000 mile long border with Colombia, with Brazil, with other countries all across South America. And guess what? Then illegal aliens can pour into Venezuela because now it's the 51st state. So forget a Mexican border being our southern border. Venezuela will become a southern border. And they'll be at the mercy of all of South and Central America. They don't have to go El Norte. They just have to go to Venezuela, and then they can pour in by the tens of millions. Mark, please pick up where you left off.
Yeah, Jeff, that's 100% right. When you consider the level of illegal immigration we had during Biden, right? Probably 20 million people. I bet if they weren't having to shell out $10,000 to the drug cartels, that number would have been 40 million, Jeff. When you look at what South America has, where do the people want to go? They want to go north. You will have millions and millions pouring in to Venezuela saying, we want asylum. And guess what? They will have the same border policies, the same immigration policies, the same requirements as Texas, as Nevada, as California, all of these states. And there isn't pardon my language, but a damn thing we can do about it because they would be a U.S. state. So all of those people, Jeff, no longer having to make that, 1,500-mile trek through Central America, through Mexico, no more having to pay drug cartels. Just walk into Venezuela and say, we want asylum. Well, that's great. So now we've got 50 million people hanging out in Venezuela. Are they going to stay there? Of course not. They're going to have to get sent to the United States to be assimilated into our country. And then guess what? Now we're in huge trouble. Now you don't have just 20 million people on welfare. Now you've got 70 million people on the public dole because we made Venezuela a 51st state. Now, look, everyone talks about he's thinking long term. He's playing 3D chess. Okay, great. Sure, I would love the $20 trillion worth of oil. But here's the problem. Venezuela's infrastructure is so bad. It's so decrepit. It's so neglected. It's going to take 10 years, 15 years before we see any of that oil coming out of the ground. Is this country going to survive for another 15 years when Democrats are in control? Do you think they're going to continue to help Venezuela pump oil? Of course not. They're going to shut down oil production, Jeff. It'll all be for nothing. I think this is a huge mistake. I get, possibly using it as leverage against the mullahs. Okay. But seriously considering making them a 51st state is, I think, a nail in the coffin.
Mark, let me ask you, do you think Trump is trolling, or do you think he is serious? Do you think he does want to build his legacy? And, if he could bring Venezuela in, which is, I understand your point, it's decrepit, the oil infrastructure, it's a third world country, it's extremely poor, but, it is a strategic piece of real estate in terms of all the oil and natural gas that they have, and other resources as well. Does Trump want this as his crown jewel for his legacy, or do you think he's trolling, and as Ronnie said, he's really playing now to the mullahs? He's getting inside their heads. He's saying, guys, it's either the bomb or your oil. Take your pick, because I got Venezuela in my back pocket. So what I'm asking you is he serious? In your view, do you think he is serious?
I really hope Ronnie's right, that that's what this plan is. I think the problem with trying to pressure these mullahs and Iran, Jeff, is they are crap crazy. They'll fight till every single one of them is dead. They don't really care, and I think for us to, even consider bringing, Venezuela in, that is just, I think, such a big mistake. But I really hope that he is just trolling, that he's not serious. But the problem, Jeff, is that the media is going to tell everyone that he is. The media is going to tell them. He said he doesn't care about you. He cares more about the people of Venezuela. He cares more about the people of Iran. He doesn't care about the American citizens. And they'll play that clip over and over and over, Jeff. I'm not worried long term. Okay, I'm not worried about 20 years from now. I'm worried about in November. I'm worried about in 2028. If the Democrats get control, it's over, Jeff. The next Democrat president is going to flood the border. They will pull the CBP back. There'll be no more border, Jeff, and you will see the beginning of the end when it comes to this country.
Mark, thank you very much for that call. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let me throw this log on the fire because I want to get into the redistricting and some of the polls that are out, which are very surprising in terms of the midterms. But let me just set it up. I'm going to take some more calls, I promise. But politically, will the Democrats use this to hurt Trump in November? That, as I said earlier, that the perception they're going to try to enforce and reinforce and cement is, as Mark put it, well, he cares more about Venezuelans than he does about Americans. Well, he's more interested in Iranians than he is about Americans. And so when Trump talks 51st state, whether you think he's serious or trolling or whatever, that this only is going to play into the Democrats' hands of trying to paint him as someone who's disconnected from the needs and concerns of average everyday Americans. 617-266-6868. Paul in Bellingham. Thanks for holding, Paul, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi,
How
Paul.
are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I hope you're going to give me a chance to. I have a few points to make after hearing all the comments this morning, because a lot of times when I call and I get to say one thing and I never get a chance to make any other comments, and then I'm off the air. But what I want to say is, first of all, when I started hearing about this Venezuela stuff, I was very irritated. No, I do not want Venezuela to be the 51st state. 51st state. Exactly. I agree with you 1,000%. But who are we talking about? President Trump. He's not a dope. He's very smart. We don't even know what's going on behind the scenes, but the president is very smart, and he did that for a reason. Like your earlier caller said, I didn't think about that, but he is 1,000% right, because those idiots over in Iran cannot be trusted. So I am glad he said what he did. The other thing is, another reason I don't want Venezuela to be the 51st state is because right now there's not enough houses for people. There's not food shortages. There's people living out in the street and everything. And why? Because all these illegal migrants have migrated here, and Maura Healey and Wu, they're catering to these people, giving them everything with our tax dollars. And you hit the nail on the head. If this was to ever happen, what is it, 30,000 or 30, however many people, they'd be all flocking here on Social Security and everything else. And then the other thing is, I do not speak Spanish. I cannot stand, I have Market Basket 3 miles from my house, and I hate going to that particular one. I heard recently they're going to change the name from Market Basket to Migrant Basket because they don't speak English on the registers. You say, can you double bag everything? And you say to the bagger, because there's a cashier and a bagger, and the bagger looks at you like you have 7 heads. Then all of a sudden, the cashier, who barely speaks English, says something in Spanish to the bagger, and the bagger goes, yeah, and you might get 1 or 2 things double bagged and everything else is single bag. So it's like, I just can't stand it. And then you have all these people over the PA system in the Market Basket in Bellingham. And I'm saying, does anybody in the store speak English anymore? That's what our country is going to. But remember, God is in control. People made a comment about Trump and this and that. Yes, he is a different person because God is in control and he almost died. But because of God, he did not die. And that's my true belief. Back to you.
Well, Paul, look, it doesn't matter if it's, because I agree with you. I think we're becoming what's called a polyglot nation. And we're becoming a multinational, multicultural, multi-ethnic country, multilingual country. And I'm just stating a fact. Show me a country like that that's ever been able to sustain itself. They tend to break up, quickly. They're not sustainable. They're not stable. So it's nothing against the Spanish language. It could be Polish. It could be Ukrainian. It could be, I don't care, French, German. Take your pick. It doesn't matter. So when you start to have 2, 3 official languages, and this is what happens, is people like you, people like me, like I don't understand Spanish. I just don't. It's a beautiful language. It's a Latin language. It's a romantic language. No question. But I don't understand it. And so, I sometimes go to Market Basket. I hear exactly what you're saying. I go to Market Basket. I'm like, I don't understand what the cashier is saying or the bagger or what they're saying over the intercom. Well, why do I have to be made to feel like a stranger in my own country? I mean, I'm sure here, let's just take Venezuela. If Venezuelans suddenly go to the supermarket, and I know there's low on food, but say things get better in Venezuela, they go to the supermarket, they don't want a cashier speaking to them in English. Of course not. They don't understand English. Or most of them don't. They go, hey, it's a Spanish-speaking country. Speak Spanish. Speak the language that I understand. I don't want English over the intercom. No. I want to know I want to understand what's being said. So this is, I think, one of the problems of many if we're thinking about seriously bringing in Venezuela or Cuba or whatever else into the United States of America. And look, part of America First, part of MAGA, was to restore not just our border, which is important, and to deport illegal aliens, important, but I thought it was to culturally unify the country, to start assimilating everyone again, that we were all Americans. Doesn't matter the color of our skin, our ethnicity, our background, that we were all one nation, one people, one culture, one country under God. And you have to have one language. what unifies a people above all is that they speak the same language and have, the same customs and traditions. And, we celebrate Thanksgiving. We have Christmas. We have Easter. We have the 4th of July. We have Memorial Day. In other words, that we have certain sacred beliefs that bind us together as a nation. But the key is you have to have a common language, because if you have a common language, you can have a common culture. And if you have a common culture, then you can have a common nation. When you start expanding and bringing in territories, and I'm telling you, and it's not a criticism. I'm not saying this to suck up or to be politically correct. Look, Spanish is one of the most spoken languages in the world. It is a beautiful language. People who speak Spanish should be proud of speaking Spanish. The Venezuelans are proud of their Spanish language. They should be. The way Italians are very proud of their Italian language, or the French, in particular, the French are very proud of the French language. They should be. It's great. But speak it in Venezuela. I mean, nothing against Spanish, but America is an English-speaking country. We have been from our very beginning. So they're not going to want to speak English. Look at Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, forget a state. Puerto Rico is a territory. I've been to Puerto Rico multiple times. Beautiful island, wonderful beaches. I love the people of Puerto Rico, but they speak Spanish, as they should. It's their native language. It's their culture. It's their heritage. They don't want to speak English. Some speak a little bit, but they want to retain their Spanish culture and their Spanish language. Venezuela is going to be the same. Like, who are we kidding? We're not just going to come in there and in a generation, suddenly 30 million Venezuelans are all going to be speaking English. They're not. They're going to speak Spanish, and they're going to insist on speaking Spanish. They're going to say, no. That's our official language. You don't play with that. So it's going to dilute our identity. It's inevitable. It's going to start. We're going to become, whether we want to or not, a bilingual, bicultural country. And I grew up in a bilingual, bicultural country, Canada. And I'm telling you, every 10 years, there's a freaking referendum on whether Quebec should separate or secede and break up the country. It's constant conflict between the English and the French. Canada has never been a united country because it's got two peoples, two cultures, two languages. And it's been a constant, it's been a festering problem since the country was formed in 1867. We're importing that into the United States. Why? We're blessed that we have a common language. Why would we want to give that up? You're just asking for trouble. Again, I go back to the Bible. The Bible warns this, the Tower of Babel. They wanted to build a great monument, a tower to God and to his glory. But the problem was they all spoke different languages, different tongues. And so they couldn't understand each other. And after a while, they started to fight amongst each other. And then the whole thing fell apart. That's what multiculturalism leads to. That's what, quote unquote, diversity, that's what it leads to. So to me, you bring in Venezuela. I'm not just talking the poverty, the 30 million people that many of them are going to go automatically on welfare, their strong communist tradition, and they do have a strong communist tradition. I'm not talking about the revolutionary Marxist terrorist cells that they have and the border that they have with all these other South American countries. You're going to bring in 30 million Spanish-speaking people as citizens right away. We're going to be flooded. And I don't know how much more this country can take. You can't absorb a third world country. You just can't. And, over what? I get it. They have a lot of oil, but no one has more oil than we do. Like, after a while, how much is enough? We're by far the energy superpower of the world. No one comes close. So I get it. It's important for Venezuela. The oil is the way they can rebuild their country. But frankly, we don't need more oil. Oh, it's nice to have more, of course, but we don't need more oil. We've got more than enough here. So that's why I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't see how this benefits us in the long run. But my bigger point is this, Paul. I didn't vote for this. I keep coming back to this point. I didn't vote for this. He never campaigned on making Venezuela the 51st state. I didn't vote for this. Same thing with wars in the Middle East. I didn't vote for this. So much of what's going on. The 8 peace deals that he signed. Okay, it's nice that he signed them, but I didn't vote for that. What I voted for was secure the border, which he's done to his credit. Deport every single illegal alien out of the United States. Gone. Vamoose. And to reverse everything that Biden did. To bring oil down, to bring gas down, to bring inflation down, to get the economy roaring again, to restore the Bill of Rights, to restore the Constitution. That's what I voted for. I didn't vote for so much of what's been going on over the last year and a half. And so my recommendation to the president, take it for what it's worth. You got to dance with the one who brung you. And, if you got so many Americans whose backs are still against the wall, who are financially living hand to mouth day to day, and they're saying, I'm hurting financially. Gas is too high. Energy is too high. Food is too high. Everything is too expensive. You got to listen to them. Because you're giving the Democrats an opportunity to win in November. And we cannot have them come back. Because I'm telling you, we're going to rue the day they take back Congress. He's going to rue it because it's going to, I believe, paralyze his presidency. But the country, they're going to reopen the border. Just for starters. So, again, the president, to me, has to focus on domestic issues like a laser beam. But that's me. Linda in Medford. Thanks for holding, Linda, and welcome.
I'm not too fond of the idea of having them become a state either. Would it be possible for us, we're downsizing some of our bases, perhaps it would be an idea to put a small base in Venezuela to keep a foot in the door? Is that a possibility?
I'm sorry, Linda, could you repeat that?
What I'm saying is, would it be a possibility for us to open a small base there with the people that we're drawing down, say, from the German base?
Yes.
And that way we would have...
Oh, I agree with you. We could have a military base. I think the government would sign one. And we have rights to their oil. So what I'm saying is, even if you want their oil and you want to, let's say, bolster our presence there, we can sign an agreement with the current Venezuelan government. They just want to stay in power. They'll sign anything we put in front of them. In other words, they'll become our protectorate. Okay, no, that's fine. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I'm going to continue to take your calls, I promise. 617-266-6868 is the number. There is no question that the Democrats now are convinced that they can topple Trump in the midterms. And they have made it crystal clear that should they win in November, if they take back the House, especially if they take back the House and the Senate, that they are going to impeach Trump. They're going to impeach him again and again and again, repeatedly, relentlessly. They're going to impeach members of his cabinet. They are going to paralyze his entire administration. But more than that, They want to derail his entire agenda. They're going to reopen the border. They want to defund ICE. In other words, they're going to do everything they can to try to return the policies of Biden and Kamala Harris. It is going to be a political civil war, and I believe Trump is going to be on the defensive for the last 2 years of his presidency, and we will have communists now running Congress. I think there's no question about it. And so that makes the situation urgent. That's why Trump's got to get the gas prices down. He's got to get energy down, inflation down. He's got to get the economy turned around as quickly as possible to come in with as much strength and popularity heading into the fall. However, opinion polls now, and this is shocking, one after another, are not showing, as of now, a blue wave. They're not showing that the Democrats are poised to get a massive majority either in the House, the Senate, or both. In fact, on the contrary, au contraire, as the French would say, it's a dead heat. There's a Harvard-Harris poll that just came out, by the way, leans Democrats, and they say it's split right down the middle. Right down the middle. That if the elections were held today, it'd be essentially a draw, which means the Republicans would retain power. You have other polls now coming out. The one that's the most favorable to the Democrats is one poll that shows 45-42 Democrats. So they're basically up +3, which is within the margin of error. And when asked repeatedly, voters, why aren't you usually, because usually the incumbent party loses in the midterms. It's always a good year for the party in opposition. This year, so far, it's not, at least according to the polls. And when voters are pressed, why are you reluctant to pull the lever for the Democrats? Voters say again and again, they are too radical, too extreme, way too far to the left. They are now a socialist communist party, and they don't want to see Mamdani or AOC or Graham Platner, or I could run down the list, imposed on the entire country through control of Congress. And so the ace in the hole so far that is holding up Trump and the Republicans is the fact now that the Democrats have gone so far to the left that they are now outside the mainstream. Now, on top of that, you now have the gerrymandering wars. And the Democrats thought they were going to win it. And now they're starting to realize they're losing it. And not only are they losing it, but they're now losing it big. And so you had the Virginia Supreme Court nullify and overturn that phony referendum that the Democrats had that allowed them to redistrict or redraw the districts, redraw the maps that would have right now the current congressional delegation is 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans. Well, they redrew a map following this referendum that gave the Democrats 10 seats to 1 Republican. So that was going to be a 4-seat pickup for the Democrats. Well, now the Virginia Supreme Court shot it down rightly, nullified it, because the procedure, the process was illegal and unconstitutional. An absolute hammer blow to the Democrats. I mean, they're livid. They're panicking. They're angry. They're so angry they want to run to the Supreme Court of the United States to try to put on hold the decision of the Virginia Supreme Court, which is not going to happen. Hell will freeze over before this happens. Now the Democrats say they want to replace the entire Virginia Supreme Court because of their, the fact that they upheld the Virginia Constitution and declared that the entire process was illegal and null and void. And so this is how the Democrats are. If they don't get their way, they just want to just completely eradicate and remove every justice from the Virginia Supreme Court. By the way, most of whom are Democrats. So do you want a real Supreme Court or you just want a rubber stamp? They want a rubber stamp. But the cumulative consequence or the effect is the Democrats now in these gerrymandering wars have just lost 4 potential seats. 4. Yeah, you're right. They also sent it to the wrong court when they made the appeal to the Supreme Court. And they misspelled Virginia in their brief, just to show you how incompetent they are. But the point is now, the Democrats are on the ropes, and I want to give you all the numbers. So, yes, they'll get 5 extra seats in California, and they're going to get 1 extra seat in Utah, and that's it. Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, all of them now, as I speak to you. Okay, my friends, so what is now happening is that the Republicans, for the first time in my lifetime, under Trump's direction and leadership, are actually playing political hardball. Smash mouth football, to use the famous analogy by Newt Gingrich. They're not playing badminton. When it comes now to these redistricting battles, they are really taking it to the Democrats. And so this Virginia Supreme Court decision, which nullifies now their attempt to add 4 seats to the Democrats in their redrawing of the congressional maps, essentially this is all that the Democrats are going to pick up in their gerrymandering wars. California, through Gavin Newsom, are going to pick up 5 Democrat seats. Utah, it's complicated, but they're going to get an extra seat, the Democrats. So that means maximum redistricting warfare is they can get +6. But I want you to see now what's going to happen with the Republicans, because the Supreme Court has green-lighted Texas's ability to gerrymander, Florida's, Mississippi's, Alabama's, Tennessee's, Ohio's, North Carolina's, Missouri's. These have all now been approved by the Supreme Court to end redistricting based along racial lines or on race. That means these majority-minority districts that were manufactured over decades by the Democrats are now gone. And that's taken away a massive advantage for Democrats. So Texas now is poised to pick up 5 Republican seats. Florida, +4. Ohio, +2. North Carolina, +1. Missouri, +1. Tennessee, +1. Louisiana, +1, maybe even +2. Alabama, minimum +1, maybe +2. South Carolina, we shall see. There are some rhinos that are trying to block it. Either 0 or +1. Mississippi now is poised to get +1. So when you look at everything in total, you're looking at maybe an extra 15 seats for the Republicans. So the Democrats now are going into November at a significant disadvantage. The wind is at the Republicans' back. And the map, the congressional map, is now easier for Republicans to win seats and to hold the Senate. The only thing now that can put the Democrats over the top is if Republicans stay home. If there's low voter turnout and Republican voters say, to hell with it, either because they're not interested or they're maybe a little bit disappointed in Trump or they're disappointed in the Republican Congress and they go, to hell with it, we're just going to sit on our hands. That is the only thing now that can help the Democrats win. If Republicans turn out for the midterms, the blue wave will be blunted. There will be no blue wave. In fact, Republicans could potentially pick up at least a dozen seats in the House to give them more breathing room, and maybe even pick up a couple seats in the Senate. So it'll actually strengthen Trump's hands. It'll strengthen his hand when he has to deal with Congress and get the rest of his MAGA America First agenda passed. And, of course, the wild card is voter fraud and election corruption and cheating. But what is clear is that the Republicans now, and this was all because of Trump. He was the one that started this. He inspired it. He guided it. He masterminded it. He said, no. The Democrats have been gerrymandering for decades. You take a state like Massachusetts, 40% vote Republican. They don't even have one seat in Congress. Not even one Republican in Congress. Not even one. You look at other states like New Mexico and others where Republicans get 46% of the vote. Not one Republican in Congress. So, no, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. We're going to redistrict. We're going to gerrymander. So what the Democrats have done in all these blue states, we're now going to do in red states. And to say the Democrats are losing their minds is an understatement. So I want you to just listen to this now. This is Basil Smikle on MS Now, a commentator on the left, saying that what Trump is now doing by redistricting in these red states and getting rid of these race-based congressional districts, these majority-minority districts, is nothing less than, you guessed it, the American version of apartheid. It's racism. Roll cut 14. Mike.
So when you think about the removal of the civic opportunity, civic engagement for black people, the fact that the president reclassified certain jobs where there are concentrations of women, particularly women of color, as professionals, making it difficult to get student loans, restricting now with the Supreme Court's help who can go to college and what colleges they can go to, and then how many hundreds of thousands of African American women lost their jobs. So there's also an economic attack on African Americans here. So when you put those two things together, to me it says you're trying to centralize through our entire federal bureaucracy and have it trickle down to the states the restriction of black civic engagement and economic empowerment. That to me rings very true to, of an American version of apartheid that is not easily unshakable.
Right. By the way, more African Americans vote now than ever before. More Africans are working now than ever before. More black women now are working more now than ever before and making more money and higher wages than ever before. I could destroy, every argument, it's one lie after another. But no. Now this is, you see, when the Democrats do it, it's fine. When Republicans now redistrict and gerrymander, suddenly, Jim Crow, segregation, apartheid, this is slavery. Listen now, this is Mara Gay. She's a New York Times opinion writer on BS Now. Roll cut 25. Mike.
So it's both, and I don't think we should miss that. And yes, it's going to animate black people and many other Democrats who are angry about this. But, Joe, because you are from the South, that what the South experiences is not unique. It's just in some ways more American. So I think a lot of Americans who are outside the South should take this as a wake-up call that their own rights are under threat. This is an attempt, I believe, to steal an election. And it may not work, you know. I believe in democracy. I believe in the ability of people to organize. But make no mistake, this is devastating. And the gravity of this is only beginning to make itself felt.
Yeah. So now the Republicans are trying to rig and steal the election. We haven't even voted yet, and they're already saying it's going to be stolen. Yeah, you can't make this up. So tell me, who's the election denier now? I'm sorry. Didn't we have the safest elections, the most honest elections in American history? Hey, you phony, you fraud, you. So I want to ask all of you, with this redistricting, these gerrymander wars, will the Republicans hold on to power in the House and in the Senate and effectively save Trump's presidency from impeachment after impeachment after impeachment should the Democrats win? Okay, I want to ask all of you, with polls now showing that many Americans do not trust the Democrats with power, that they consider them too radical, too far to the left, way too socialistic, even bordering on communism, that they are reluctant to vote for the Dems, and they are still willing to give Republicans a chance in November. You look at that, combined now with the gerrymandering victories that are being racked up in red state after red state after red state. Do you believe that Trump will win the midterm elections and that the blue wave will not happen? And as I told Grace last night, if the Democrats do not get their blue wave, if they lose the midterms, they're going to go absolutely berserk. Their supporters are going to go, I think they're going to riot, if you want to know the truth. Their heads are going to explode. They're going to go absolutely apoplectic. Everything that they're talking and strategizing about is predicated on impeaching Trump. That's all they can talk about, is impeaching Trump. It fills up their days. It fills up their nights. It's the basis of their whole identity now. They are so certain that they're going to win, and they are so eager. They're licking their chops. They're salivating at the prospect of 1, 2, 3, 4 impeachments. Just keep them coming one after another. And if they can't, then I'm telling you, you're going to see the mother of all meltdowns. Because I don't know if the Democrats can handle losing again. And I'm telling you, they have no one to blame but themselves. When you're this crazy, that's the reason why voters don't want to vote for you. And it's their extremism that is going to cost them the midterms. Maybe. We'll see. Andy in Milford. Thanks for holding, Andy, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Andy.
Hey, Jeff. It all ties together. And if you'll indulge me, I'll lay out why. And for part of this, for a minute, you'll have to take off your Kuhner man hat and put on your Professor Kuhner hat. First, on the president's remarks about making Venezuela a state, and it's clear that ultimately ties into putting pressure on Iran. We're in a lot of ways, the United States is at a crossroads where we've got to make up our mind. We're either going to be a republic or we're going to be an empire. Now, the founding fathers, when they looked at ancient Rome, they adopted the Roman Republic, but they rejected being an empire. And we've got to get back to being a constitutional republic. Venezuela needs to be their own country with their own language and their own culture, and we've got a real good opportunity for them to become a real strong and respected ally. So I'll just park that there. Now, just coming forward into the gerrymandering and everything else, and I actually messaged you on Messenger about this a couple of weeks ago. And everybody, all the MAGA patriots need to listen to this carefully. Where these midterms are really going to be won is in the primaries and the nominations. And everybody's got to be very careful not to allow their current disappointment with President Trump to miss the forest through the trees. Right now, the primaries is where we have a real opportunity. Cassidy in Louisiana, Cornyn in Texas, Graham in South Carolina. We've got a real solid opportunity to send all three of them packing. Mark Lynch has a real good shot in the South Carolina primary in June 9. And that's where this thing can really be won. Now, I love President Trump. I'm a 3-time Trump voter, but I've got to say this with all seriousness. The biggest mistake President Trump ever could have made was to allow Senator Lindsey Graham anywhere near the White House, let alone in the Situation Room. And if we, at the grassroots, Jeff, can send those 3 rhinos that I just mentioned packing this November.
Oh, it'll change everything. Brilliant. Brilliant. Andy, I'm telling you, brilliant. Look, Cornyn, I think, is going to lose to Paxton, who's MAGA all the way. Cassidy, I think, is in real trouble, and he's going to lose now to a potential MAGA candidate. And to me, the big one is Lindsey Grahamnesty, as I call him, the warmonger. You take out Lindsey Graham, that's going to be tough because he's got a lot of money behind him. Trump has endorsed Lindsey Graham. I agree with you. I think Lynch is way more America first, way more MAGA, ironically, way more pro-Trump than Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is such a fraud. Remember, he was the one that opposed Trump in 2016. He was a never-Trumper in 2016. And then, after the election to Biden, where it was clearly stolen, and January 6th, it was Lindsey Graham who came out and said, we need to purge Trump and his supporters from the Republican Party. I mean, the guy's a Judas over and over and over and over again. And all this guy wants to do is bomb every freaking country on the face of the planet. He's a disaster for the Republican Party. So I'd love to see that SOB go down. I really would. Now, you get rid of those 3, that's a very different Senate. That's a very different Republican Party. And Andy, what people haven't focused on enough were some of the recent primaries. To your point, what happened in Indiana, it was a bloodbath for the rhinos in those primaries. Every Trump-endorsed candidate, every MAGA Republican won. So what you're starting to see is that the Republican Party is becoming more MAGA at the state level, at the congressional level, at the national level. And if this starts to play out in these Senate primaries, I agree with you, Andy. You know, we could really consolidate our power in November and make the MAGA revolution go on into 2028 and for a generation. So that's why I'm urging people, look, sure, Trump's made some mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But look at the alternative. To me, there's no question. It's either Trump or bust. You want Hakeem Jeffries, my God, and AOC to be running Congress? You want Chuck Schumer and Bernie Sanders to be running the Senate? They're going to bury us. So we have to turn out. And if we turn out, I'm telling you, we're going to win. Because now with these gerrymandering wars, we've got a huge, huge advantage going into November. And that's why, if you want to understand why the Kuhner man keeps pleading with Trump, if you can, end this thing with Iran decisively, overwhelmingly, and quickly. Because if we can get gas and oil and inflation down and under control, we're going to win. To me, there's no question we're going to win. Because look at the alternative. Really, Trump can just campaign on one issue. And even one sentence. Do you want crazy? That's it. Do you want crazy? Because that's what you're going to get if the Democrats win in November. Or if you want to add to it, do you want crazy communism? Because that's what you're going to get. So do you want Biden 2.0? Do you want Mamdani, but for the whole country? Is that what you want? Because that's what you're going to get. And I'm telling you, the country's going to say, "Niet," as the Russians say. "Nein," as the Germans would say. Okay? No. Hell no. So, no, I haven't given up on the midterms. On the contrary, I think we got a really good shot at holding the House and maybe even expanding the Senate with a big difference. It's going to be more MAGA, which means more pro-America and more pro-America first. So on that note, Andy, as always, thank you so much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. All right, Dr. Grace is warming up in the bullpen. The moment we get contact with her, we're going to have her on. Let's go quickly to Al in Billerica. Al, thanks for holding and welcome.
Hey, how are you, Jeff? So quick one for you. I want to go back to what you started with earlier this morning on Venezuela. I know you've moved on to many other topics, but I got to make this comment.
Yes, go ahead, Al.
My opinion is this. Right now, Donald Trump is over in China, heading to China. So we know that the Chinese are highly involved in Latin America, specifically Brazil. So Trump is sending a message prior to heading there and saying, look, guys, you're in Latin America and Brazil. Guess what? So are we. I don't think Venezuela will ever become the 51st state. It's ridiculous, and that's all I've got to say.
Al, would you support Venezuela becoming the 51st state?
I want to support that. Look, let's be realistic. Everything that everyone's talked about, what you've said, I voted for all the same reasons you did. And right now, he's way off track. So let's forget about Venezuela. Let's forget about the ego trips, and let's focus on the U.S. and bring it back to what the U.S. was when I first arrived here. That's it.
Amen. Al, amen. Thank you so much for that call. Okay, we finally got her. Dr. Grace putting liberals in their place. Grace Voto. Full disclosure, my wonderful wife, my better half, and yes, the Kuhner man married way up. Grace, I got to ask you right out of the gate, President Trump gave an interview to Fox News, and according to Fox, he told them he is, quote unquote, seriously considering making Venezuela the 51st state. He says it would have to be a national referendum in Venezuela, but once they approve it, he would then ask Congress to approve it here, especially through Republicans in the House and in the Senate. And he believes that Venezuela would be the crown jewel for the United States. It has over $40 trillion of oil and natural gas, he says, in the ground. We need Venezuela. He says he wants Venezuela. Should Venezuela become the 51st state? What say you?
Hell no, it should not become the 51st state. We don't want it, and we do not need it. I was absolutely shocked when President Trump said initially that he wanted to get involved in rebuilding Venezuela, to rebuild its oil infrastructure. I think that, first of all, he operated illegally under international law by forcing the government into a deal. There's no basis for that from a legal standpoint. And the worst of it is, Jeff, that it's obvious that all of this is going to benefit some big oil companies. Now, you got to remember that big oil poured hundreds of millions of dollars into Trump's reelection campaign. And one of the reasons, which we all supported, was we wanted to see this country energy independent, and we wanted fossil fuels to be supported. But it looks like there's another agenda to this, and it is that some of those oil companies, they got burned in Venezuela, and they wanted to be recompensed. And now what we have is Trump had said, no, I'm not doing this to pay them back. You know, they lost money. Turns out there's something else that he's doing. Instead of their lawsuits, they're going to drop all their lawsuits against Venezuela, and now they're going to get what's called a debt for equity swap. So Trump is going to help Venezuela rebuild the oil industry, and these companies that lost money, they're going to get equity into the new structure. And that's how they're going to get repaid and then some. So this has nothing to do with the good interests of the average American citizen. This is about the president. He's got to repay the donors who helped him win the second term. And that's one reason why this second term looks so different than the first term. Because in the first term, he didn't take as much money from so many different interests. In the second term, his back was against the wall. He was facing legal jeopardy. He was financially reeling from all the money he had paid due to a lawfare against him. And 75% of the money he took in came from big companies. And so basically, if you look at, if you ask the key question, why does the second term seem so different? That's really the answer to almost everything that you see so different from term one, which I loved so much.
Grace, let's just leave aside, and I hear what you're saying about the oil companies and the donors. Just as a policy issue on the merits, Venezuela, very wealthy in natural resources. It's got not just oil and gas, it's got so many other minerals and resources. It's got 30 million people. Prior to Chavez and Maduro, it was one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America. That was just maybe 15, 20 years ago. That Venezuela could really be one of the wealthiest places in all of South America. Would it be an asset to the United States? Like Alaska, for example, if we were to, or Hawaii, if we were to acquire Venezuela? What say you?
No, it's going to be nothing but a huge headache. Look, we're talking about all the fraud in our country that J.D. Vance is trying to clean up, right? That's nothing compared to the fraud and corruption in Venezuela. And now, because Trump wants to run Venezuela, I don't know if the audience even knows this, we have direct financial oversight, the Americans do, of all oil sales. And Venezuela has to submit to us a monthly budget. And now we, the American taxpayers, have paid for a company called KPMG. It's to audit Venezuela's oil sales and track the money to try to make sure that the money isn't going to go to the corrupt influences there. In other words, as J.D. Vance is trying so hard to try to clean up the corruption here, which we barely got a handle on, we're going to get involved in trying to clean up the corruption over there. This is nonsense. It's crazy, Jeff. The whole proposal is crazy. And you ask this question about the midterms to the audience. Forget about the Democrats being nuts. The biggest problem that Trump faces now is that everybody who voted for a specific election agenda within MAGA, he's got a section that gets very angry when he talks about this stuff. When he talks about taking over Venezuela, that's in line with taking over Cuba, Panama, Canada, Greenland. This is not what he ran on. And the biggest problem that he faces, and I know you've been masterful in trying to prevent this seepage, the biggest problem is the division within the group that brought him to the dance. Right now, there's a huge division there. And when he makes comments like we want to get further involved in Venezuela, he alienates a key segment of his own base that he needs to turn out in November. So when he talks like this, my first reaction is, dude, do you want to lose the midterms? Is that your strategy here? Look, you're doing everything you can because you see the earthquake coming. And that earthquake is that MAGA is split. And the people that are all in on Trump have to understand that there's a segment now, and that segment is growing every day, that is fed up with the focus on foreign affairs. That's not what we voted for. And this group is increasingly politically homeless. Where do these people belong? We voted for Trump for this agenda. If he doesn't fulfill this agenda, where do they belong? That's a key question.
Well, let me ask you this, point blank. I mean, I don't want to, if I'm getting too personal, please tell me. But are you planning to vote for the Republicans in November? Or are you politically homeless and you're going to stay home?
No, I'm just saying that emotionally, right now, often I feel politically homeless, meaning I want the Trump of the first term. Where is that person? Where is he?
No, I understand that, but I just want to know, you, Grace Voto, the wonderful wife of Jeff Kuhner, please tell me please tell me, A, you're voting in November, and B, you will be voting Republican, right? Please.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. But my concern is
across the board. So you're going to vote.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
But what you're saying is, and this, Grace, we've got about a minute. So let me just quickly pose the question. With these gerrymandering victories that could give, Republicans up to, say, 15 to 20 seats, potentially, is that enough to save the Republicans in November? To give them a victory? Or are these disaffected MAGA supporters that you're talking about, who are politically homeless, will they stay home, and will that be enough, even with the gerrymandering victories, to give the Democrats a victory?
That's the danger, that even the gerrymandering victories and even the focus on how crazy the Democrats are might not be enough if Trump doesn't understand how upset members of his base are increasingly becoming. These people, many of them, Jeff, their backs are against the wall financially. They cannot wait and wait and wait. They were promised that the affordability crisis would be solved on day one. And instead we're talking about Venezuela that is even more corrupt than the blue states in America. This is political lunacy, Jeff. It's lunacy.
Still love me?
Very much.
No, sometimes I feel maybe, you resent me for being such a strong Trump supporter. But, okay. So Grace says he's lost her emotionally. She's still going to vote for him or the Republicans in November. Okay, let me ask all of you. Do you agree or disagree with Grace? She says that Trump, increasingly now, there is a danger politically coming up for the midterms, that there is a chunk of MAGA that voted for him that now feels politically homeless, and that they may not show up to vote in November. Does that, I'm just curious, is that you? Are you one of those people? If you are, tell me why. If not, if you believe that this is political suicide or politically reckless or irresponsible, tell me why. 617-266-6868. Maestro Mike, where do you want me to go to next, Mike? Diane in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Diane, and welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Diane.
I listen every day. I think the first time I've gotten through. Anyway, I am a strong Trump supporter. I think his list of accomplishments are very long for the American people, and everything he does is for the American people. Still, I know a lot of people are being really negative about it. I just don't agree. I think that he's done so many things, and every move seems to want to make and create wealth for America, just like the Venezuela. I agree. I think it could bring in wealth. And they were so against the tariffs because, people with small businesses were saying it was making the goods to sell, to make their product to sell or whatever, more expensive. Well, eventually, he wants everything built and bought in America. He's very strong about buy American, American made. So that eventually you won't have to rely on other countries to sell your goods, and that creates jobs for Americans. It's just, I think people have, it's like an attention of a goldfish that they turn on them on a dime. And the alternative is what? Communism? Who wants that? Like, I would never just stay home or not vote just because you disagree with one or two things that he's doing. But
amen. Amen, Diane. You should call more often. Seriously. That's been my argument. I wish you were with me at the dinner table. Seriously. I mean, he closed the border. He stopped the invasion. He's begun, now he's faced tremendous opposition. We just saw what they did in Minneapolis. But, he's pushing a campaign of deportations. He's getting criminal illegal aliens out. He's, how many billions of dollars he set aside for ICE and Customs and Border Protection to begin all these mass deportations? You look at tariffs. He is reshoring American manufacturing. He's restoring our economic independence. He's finally bringing supply chains back home. Wages are up. Employment is up. I could run down the whole list. I mean, yes, the war has led to gas prices being higher, but once this war ends, the gas prices will drop like a stone. I mean, before the war, I remember we were at $2 a gallon, at least where I was. We were at $2 a gallon. Who got rid of DEI? He did. Who's the one that's exposed the radicalism of the Democratic Party? Him. Who's the one that's now finally holding people accountable in the deep state? Him. So I look at everything that he's accomplished. I could go on and on. We are now an energy superpower because of him. We're pumping out 24 million barrels. 24 million barrels of oil a day. A day. So, to me, I think there's no question that Trump has had numerous successes as president of the United States. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So, I think, look, people are missing the forest for the trees. And by the way, this war will end. And when it does, oil and gas will go down. Energy will go down. Inflation will go back down. I'm just hoping it happens, with enough time so that he can win the midterms soon enough, early enough so that, there's no more economic pain that people are feeling at the pump so he can coast into the midterms with the wind at his back. But Diane, I agree with you. He has done so much. And look, let's just say he did nothing. Okay? Just close the border. Let's just, by the way, people are forgetting tax cuts, the big, beautiful bill, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax for the most part on Social Security. But let's just say he just closed the border. That's it. Okay? That's it. Nothing else. He saved us from Kamala Harris. There was Biden 2.0. As you put it, it's communism or Trump. And communism will kill us. Diane, am I wrong?
I agree with everything you said 1 million gazillion %. It's like everything that you listed. And now the latest thing is they're going to do something, crack down on these college students that they're promising them jobs after.
Oh, yeah, you're completely right. You're absolutely, completely right. So, and by the way, he's removing anti-Semitism from the universities. Okay, my friends, the best way to listen to the Kuhner Report is on the iHeartRadio app. And as many of you know, we have launched a brand new segment. It is becoming quickly one of our most popular. Kuhner's Talk Back Tit for Tat. Just look for the red microphone in the upper right-hand corner of the app and leave a message for either me, for Sandy, for Mike. Agree, disagree, respond, react. Honestly, anything goes. So leave your talkbacks anytime during the week. And every Monday in the final segment, as we've been doing now for a month, we are going to play the best ones on the air. You can be part of the show. So download the iHeart app, hit that red mic, baby, and join Kuhner's Talkback tit for tat. Tom, red, white, and blue dynamite baby in New Jersey. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Jeff Kuhner, making America great again, one Kuhner report at a time. That's red, white, and blue dynamite, baby. Hey, Jeff, you know who the werewolves of London are? They are the jihadist Muslims are the werewolves of London. Warren Zevon, if he were with us, God rest his soul, he could write a new song. Those are your werewolves of London, Jeff.
Mike, buddy, Tom, buddy, what do you make of this? You've got a lot of people now saying that they're disaffected. These are Trump supporters, Trump voters. They're disaffected with the Trumpster. They think that he's taking his eye off the ball when it comes to domestic issues. They wish he would focus less on foreign policy. And this Venezuela proposal, many are not happy with. What say you?
Hey, Jeff, at the next dinner table, I want Grace to consider Grace Voto putting lefties in their place. We passed liberals about 20, 30 years ago. All right? So I want her to change her theme a little bit. And Grace, we love you, but I don't want to hear about international law and emotional arguments. I want to hear the U.S. Constitution, the Monroe Doctrine, and making America great again. And the way we do that, Jeff, whether it be Greenland, Venezuela, Cuba, or the Panama Canal, Jeff, it's a cost-benefit analysis. It's a risk-reward analysis. And there's no man that can make that argument better than Donald Trump. 45 and 47, baby. Present it to the American people, honestly, openly, all the issues, the upside, the downside. We'll have our referendum, and let's make a clear and clear-minded decision. And, you know, Jeff, his first term, President Trump, I don't know. What was so great about it? He was obstructed from day one. That Goonie bird, Jolly Green Giant. Remember Comey, when he said, yeah, I went in there and I set the trap from General Flynn, and we got him. That's what we had in the first term. And I hope he gets prosecuted. And, Jeff, I'm praying for my Christmas present will be Ilhan Omar with the $100 bills stuffed up in her hijab there. I want her defrocked from Congress, and I want her deported, Todd Blanche. Let's go, baby.
Amen.
She's a crook.
She's a stone-cold crook. Tom, you're absolutely right. Tom, as always, thank you so much for that call. 617-266-6868. Okay, you heard Tom. He says, look, Trump is thinking big picture, Monroe Doctrine. This is why he's going on about Greenland, Canada, Panama Canal, Cuba, Venezuela. This is about cementing American power, American influence, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere, and to make us the greatest energy superpower the world has ever seen. Let the American people decide if we want to have Venezuela become the 51st state. Agree, disagree. Mark in Chelmsford. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Mark.
Just two comments. One was another thing that Trump has done that the Biden administration just ignored completely. He listens to the justice system. He fights it, but he listens and he follows the end results. Whereas with Biden, with student loans and stuff like that, he just ignored the justice and did what he wanted and say, okay, try to stop me.
You're completely right. And I think that's another reason why, people are frustrated with Trump. But every judge, every two-bit rogue judge has been blocking him every step of the way. And you're right. Trump does obey the law. And he appeals, and he doesn't ignore him. He appeals him, and eventually he wins. I mean, he's wearing the Supreme Court out, Mark. because it's always, he's always want to fast track decisions to them, but he appeals and he appeals, and of course he wins, but appealing takes time. So that's why people are saying, well, he's, we wish he would do more, or they're disaffected. And I'm like, well, he's not Biden. He's not, they call him a king. Well, actually, Biden was the king. And you're right. He obeys the law and he appeals. And that eats up time and it delays things. It obstructs. And that's, I think, the whole point of it. But anyway, you're on a roll, Mark. Please keep going.
Final comment on that part was that he's just showing that the judges are not, not all of them, but most of them are biased. And they're biased towards the liberal side of things. But that's because they're all, following the money. But the other thing I wanted to say was Trump, I think someone mentioned it already, Trump with the, as he's leaving the United States to go fight China, he makes a comment saying Venezuela is going to be our 51st state. As far as I'm concerned, I just laugh at that kind of stuff because all he's doing is scaring people, especially China, because China thought they had a foothold in the Central America area. And they found out right away from what Trump did that their foothold is nothing more than a facade.
Well,
and that's all I needed to say.
Well, Mark, I got to tell you, that's your excellent point, because what Trump did almost on day one was kick China out of the Panama Canal. Right. And what he's really doing is he's kicked China out of the Western Hemisphere. He's telling them, look, you're not going to have any influence in our backyard, period, full stop. And that's an interesting point, Mark. In other words, he says it because the timing is everything. He says it just before he leaves for China. And I think you're right. I think the message wasn't just to the mullahs in Iran. I think the message was to Xi Jinping. Yeah, Venezuela used to be your ally. Not only is it now under our control, it's our protectorate. Hell, we may even take it over as a 51st state. Blank you. You think it was yours? Not only is it ours. You know what? I'm thinking about making it even a full-fledged member of the Union. Suck on that, G. So I think you're right, Mark. I think he's standing up to China and letting them know that the days of bullying us in our own backyard are over. They're over. Mark, thank you very, very much for that call. Mike? Harry in Maine. Thanks for holding, Harry, and welcome.
Good morning. How are you this morning, my friend?
Very good. How are you, Harry?
I'm terrific. Now, I'm not going to pick on Dr. Grace, but to my friends out there that are taking Grace's position, there's no way Trump 1 is better than Trump 2. Let me just give you a couple examples. See if you remember these names. Trump 1, Mike Pence. Trump 1, Rex Tillerson. Trump 1, Mad Dog Mathis. Mark Esper. Jeff Sessions. How could we forget him? How about Elaine Chao? Okay, of the wife of, what's his name? Demented, ready to fall off the face of the earth.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell,
cocaine,
okay?
Cocaine Mitch.
Yeah, exactly. Just to name a few, okay? So Trump's second administration is 10,000 times better than the first administration, and I'm not going to be redundant. A lot of your callers have already mentioned some of the accomplishments that we've accomplished with this administration domestically. But what people fail to see, Jeff, they fail to realize, and this comes under the form of low-informed voters, we're in a world economy. That's just the matter of the fact. It's just 100% global in world economy at this point. Between the improvements that we've had with transportation, in IT, the internet, and so forth, we can't stick our head in the sands and not realize that we have to be confined to the United States, the contiguous United States. We have to be involved in world affairs. Your callers pointed out, and rightfully so, what he's done in Panama has an impact on us domestically. What he's done in Venezuela, listen, we have a trading partner now with Venezuela. All the other baloney about the 51st state, and so that's all.
No, I hear you. No, I look, Harry, I think you're making a very, very persuasive case. I want to ask you, and I'd like as many of you, I want to take as many calls as possible. 617-266-6868. Trump 2 or Trump 1? Which of the two do you prefer? Trump's first administration, Grace said she loved Trump 1. We had Harry in Maine saying, I much prefer Trump's second administration. Where do you stand? Now, the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Was Trump trolling when he said he was seriously considering Venezuela becoming the 51st state? Do you believe he was trolling? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in national ER. You can also vote via X, my handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, KUHN as in national ER. Bob in Marblehead. Thanks for holding, Bob, and welcome.
Jeff, just something I wanted to give you an assignment, both you and Grace, because I think she's brilliant. Something I learned at the Naval War College. Have you heard of Karl von Clausewitz?
Yes.
He's okay. So take his center of gravity point of view and turn it around. Instead of what's the center of gravity to Trump to get him across the finish line? What does he have to do? The Prussian strategist was looking at how do you defeat an enemy. What I'm saying is I want to know the positive side. I want to know what you can use as a center of gravity to put him across the finish line. And I think that if he can get that, because I think he definitely has studied Clausewitz, and I think his second term proves it. I think the way he's using the military, I would have changed a couple of the priorities. I would have hit the IRG first, and I would have taken the Strait first as a Navy guy for 30 years. And so that would be my input if he asked me. He said, "What would you do first?" I'd take the IRGs out, and I would take the Strait because the Navy can do it. We've done it before, and cut off the mullah's center of gravity. Period. End of story. What do you think?
Well, Bob, look, I think clearly he should have taken the Strait of Hormuz, or the U.S. Military should have taken it very early, because that's really the only bargaining chip, the only leverage the Ayatollahs have left. And you're right, the IRGC, that's the backbone of the regime. That's the foundation of the regime. You break the IRGC, you've broken the regime. I mean, they're almost one and the same. And so I think you're right on both counts. To be honest, I think if Trump, if he could have it his way and you'd have him on the couch, just, privately in a relaxed atmosphere, he would rather say, I wish I could have waited a year. In other words, gotten the midterms over with, because without the Iran, look, this economy was booming before the Iran war. We were starting to enter the golden age. There's no question. Okay, gas was way down. Inflation was really going down. Economic growth was really starting to take off. I mean, the tariffs were in place. I mean, the economy, everything was humming on all cylinders. And it just would have gotten stronger and stronger month by month by month by month. So I think, if you say to him, what would you want to do differently? Time. Because Trump now has become an anaconda. That's the blockade. The blockade is like an anaconda. He's just going to squeeze him now and squeeze him and squeeze him and squeeze him until he just chokes him to death. And the Iranians don't have a response. But the blockade that we have is devastatingly effective. The only drawback, and you know this better than anybody, Bob, as a Navy man, blockades take time. They're super effective, but they take time. And that's in terms of the midterms, politically, that's the one thing Trump doesn't have. And so he's looking for a quicker knockout blow. So I think, to be honest, had you done those two things that you recommended and he had a little bit more time, this thing would be over. I mean, because if you just look at it objectively, this is one of the most spectacular military operations I've ever seen. I mean, their Navy, their Air Force, their air defenses, their ballistic missile stockpile, it's gone. It's been obliterated.